The Stanley Cup Final is here, and it's a matchup so nice we are getting it twice, with the Edmonton Oilers taking on the Florida Panthers in Game 8 going down tonight. And seeing online a few people who have a little bit of I don't know what the right word is. I guess some fatigue with this matchup because we saw it a year ago, and because, quite frankly, the way that the conference finals were going, we've been getting ready for this one for a little bit, right? It's no surprise that this matchup was here. And so I do think there was a few people who were like, ugh, again. But for me, it is all right. Again, I can't wait. I think that these two teams are playing some fantastic hockey right now. Both teams are playing at an incredibly high level, and you have the Hyman injury on Edmonton's side, and we'll get to that one in a second here. But aside from that, you have a couple of teams who have been well rested. There isn't one team like the Carolina-Florida one at the start of the last round where one team has been off for a month, and the other team played on Wednesday or Monday. So you don't have that. These two teams are rested. These two teams are ready. And for the most part, again, aside from a 50-goal scorer on one side, these two teams are relatively healthy as you can be after the marathon that is an NHL season. So we are getting these two teams at close to the peaks of their powers. And so I think that there is a lot to be excited about in this matchup. On the Panthers side, I am so impressed by this team that goes out. They get to the Stanley Cup a year or 2 years ago, I guess. Now they win the Stanley Cup last year, and there has been no letdown. The letdown happened in the regular season, but that's because people were banged up. Ekblad was suspended, and you just had a team that was like, look, if we have to give up home ice advantage, we have to give up home ice advantage. I will say that will possibly play into this one coming up here this week and into the next few days. But I do think that what Florida has done to stay hungry, because we have seen so many championship teams have that Stanley Cup hangover, and it's okay, well, you just don't have that same intensity, and that has not been lacking. That this is still a team that is hungry. I don't think they're going to be able to match Edmonton's hunger, but I have been so impressed at what I have seen from this Florida Panthers team that they have a mission, and that is to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. There isn't we've been here before, it's fine, we'll turn it on, whatever. They have been full marks for how they have played here in this series. I will say, because I am expecting this to be a long series, that home ice advantage thing isn't nothing. There is, I think, a real edge here for Edmonton, who will have Game 7 on their home ice. For them to have now that edge compared to what it was a season ago, I think that certainly could help them. And that is a bit of an X factor in this series that I hadn't necessarily thought about until we started talking about it here today. But I do think that is something that could play into it a little bit. Although, again, this Panthers team has seen it all, done it all, experienced it all. So that's not necessarily going to be a massive hindrance, I think, for them. On the Edmonton side, I said coming into the playoffs that they were a team that I thought wasn't quite as good as the team that competed for a Stanley Cup a year ago. That being said, I think they're playing better now than they were going into the Stanley Cup a year ago. And I think specifically it's on the defensive side, which is crazy because Ekholm's been out the whole time. And they are still playing fantastic defensive hockey. And that is where I think there is a little bit of a step up. Like, I think there is a little bit more defensive responsibility going on with this hockey team, and that is allowing them to have some of the dominance that they have experienced. And the part that has got me is that I have been trying to figure out how to properly phrase this. They're playing quick. You know, like they are defending quickly, and that is, I think, a very difficult thing to manage when you have a team that has as much speed as Edmonton has, and they are just swarming you in the defensive zone. Like I don't view Dallas as a slow hockey team. They made Dallas look slow, and they just overwhelmed them with that defensive pressure. And so you are having to make these decisions in rapid time, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. The one thing I will say is, again, this is where the experience of the Panthers comes in. this team does not get overwhelmed. They stay very whelmed in their approach to these games. And so I don't think you're going to be able to speed up the process of Florida. I think if anything, this Florida team will be able to see all of that speed and try to catch you out of position one way or the other. But the speed that they play with can be overwhelming. And then you saw in Game 5 against Dallas where you have the Ekholm shot block and McDavid is gone. Like, it is one mistake in your end and it is going back the other way with incredible amounts of speed. So that is where Edmonton can have a real edge in this series, is they are the faster team. And I have said that Florida impresses me because they can play anyone's style, and odds are they can play it better than you can. This is the one where I don't think that's true. I don't think they can run and gun as well as Edmonton can. Now, if it is a Wild West shootout high scoring game, they can keep up for sure. But if it's a track meet, if it is end to end to end to end to end, that is Edmonton's game. And Florida can play it, just not as well as the Oilers can. So Edmonton really needs to, like I said, just speed this game up as it's moving along. I do think that no Zach Hyman is a problem for Edmonton. I think that is, like we were saying it was a concern going into the games against Dallas when they didn't have him. But the real problem was going to be against Florida, and this is it. Like, Sergei Bobrovsky, when he is on, and generally in the playoffs, he's on. But when he is going, it is difficult to beat him from distance, basically, for lack of a better term. So you're going to have to get those grinded out, banging away at the rebounds goals, and that is where Hyman has made a very good living for himself. That is where I think you're really going to miss. Not that the rest of these guys just can't go into those areas. We know, like, Draisaitl's a large human. Kapanen has scored goals in those spots. McDavid can score goals. Like, they have guys who can, but the best one on their team, and the one that is kind of the trigger guy for a lot of things that they can do, is Zach Hyman, and not having him in the lineup is, I think, a real disadvantage for Edmonton. And he was the guy who I think did those things really well. And Corey Perry can get there, but I think Florida is going to be better equipped to stop that than Dallas was in the last series. So again, I just... This is a series where you can go kind of point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. And I am so excited for it. It starts tonight. I can't wait. Everyone loves these. Who are the X factors going into this? Look, this is one of the things that I get a little bit frustrated about sometimes because it's an old radio thing, and it's still kind of just stuck in my brain a little bit. This series is going to be won based on who the best, which team's best players step up, right? Like, it is going to basically come down to, we saw it in the last one, like for Edmonton, where McDavid, Draisaitl, and the Edmonton top lines outplayed Rantanen, Johnston, Robertson, and all of those guys on the Dallas side. That's how it was won. But you always like to look at, okay, who are going to be kind of, if it's a tie, who are going to be the tiebreakers in those? And I'm looking at one on each team. I would say Rodrigues, I think, is probably the X factor for the Panthers. He steps up when Verhaeghe goes down with when Reinhart goes down with the injury, and he steps up and just fills in admirably. Again, the star players are going to be the top, obviously, they're the biggest parts of this, but I think that Edmonton, when they lost against Dallas, it was because they got kind of out-depthed. I don't think that is necessarily a problem here, but if Florida can out-depth Edmonton, then that is a real strong suit, because then that kind of allows you to go, all right, we're going to go Barkov against McDavid. Will we win that? Maybe, maybe not. But we're going to do that, and we're going to assume that our next three are going to beat you, right? And then you can even go like Tkachuk against Draisaitl. Okay, like that's going to be a really good matchup. And then bottom two lines, that's where maybe Florida can have the advantage, and that's where you're looking for a Rodrigues to maybe step up. Corey Perry is the X factor on Edmonton, and he, I would presume, continues to move up in the lineup with no Zach Hyman, so he is going to try to play that role and score those very difficult goals. And so that's why I think he really is the X factor of the series, where if he can just kind of be 75% of Zach Hyman, then that's a huge plus for Edmonton and gives them a very real opportunity to win this series. Obviously, the goaltending is going to be a big question. I am not as confident in Skinner going into this series as I was last year, and I wasn't last year. I think that while the numbers look very good, and a lot of this does feel like I'm just kind of picking at different Edmonton things, and maybe there's a little bit of that, the Calgary radio guy doing that on Edmonton guys, but I just feel like Dallas didn't do the things against Skinner that you needed to do to kind of make him get a little bit out of his comfort zone. I thought that they actually did a lot of things that you do to let Skinner get into the games, where it's just a lot of shots from distance, a lot of shots without traffic in front of him, and it just lets him kind of get settled into these games. I think that Florida doesn't do that. Florida doesn't let anyone get settled. And while Skinner has experience in this, in a 7-game series against them a season ago, I do think that he is just a little bit more wobbly in this than last year. I think you look at, the Robertson goal where he's coming down and scores 5-hole. I think that was the one. Like, that, it's moments like that where it's like this guy, like, I made the joke on 960 out here in Calgary. There was a couple of times where you would do the play-by-play thing, like, oh, how did that stay out? But it wasn't a exclamation or anything. It was a genuine question. How? How did that stay out? I don't understand. I don't want to say it was just luck, because that is taking away from him more than I want to, but there is an aspect of he felt like he got beat a bit, and either a puck bounced away, or there was a guy there, or there just wasn't a whole lot of traffic, and they were able to clear. Credit Edmonton for doing that, but I think that he's gettable, and I think he is gettable specifically in the way that Florida can get him. So I think there are going to be at a few moments, at least, I was going to say games, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think there's going to be a few moments where that creeps in, and I think given how evenly matched these two teams are, that might be enough. Official prediction time. I'm going Panthers again. You could probably figure that out. And look, for Edmonton fans, this is a time to rejoice, because I have not picked you in any round so far. So congratulations on your victory then. But I feel like the goalie thing is a little bit too much. I think the Panthers are playing at a much higher level than people are I think giving them credit for, because the Hurricane series was so one-sided. You look at it and, Hurricanes, yeah, whatever. But no. That's a very good hockey team that the Panthers made to look like not a very good hockey team. So credit to them for that. And I just think a lot of people, I don't want to say are sleeping on the Panthers because they're the defending Cup champions, but I think it is a little easy to say, oh, Edmonton's more desperate. Look at how well they played against Dallas, because we give Dallas more credit than Carolina. They're obviously, this is obviously their time. And I don't think anyone's playing this sport as well as the Panthers are right now. Obviously, Edmonton is a close second. That's why they're still playing. But I view this as a real opportunity for the Panthers. So look, it's not, I'm not saying Panthers in 5. I have Panthers in 7, which does mean they have to go into Edmonton and win a game, a game 7. But I have it as Panthers in 7, and I think if they are going to do it, Barkov is going to be the Conn Smythe because of how effective he is on both sides of the ice, and I think that story will kind of grow as the series goes on. So the official prediction is in, and it is Florida Panthers in 7. Obviously, a lot of hockey talk still to come as we run through the Stanley Cup playoffs. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, because we bounce around on the show a lot, but if you just want the hockey, if you just want the basketball, if you just want the fighting stuff that's coming up later on in the show, then we got all the playlists up on Couch Potato Diary on YouTube. So youtube.com/@CouchPotatoDiary, and just find whatever sport you want, and that's where all the breakdowns are for that one. Also, if you are enjoying the show and want to support what we are doing here, or you just want to help the dog and cats live their best life, there is a tip link now on both Twitch and YouTube. I don't believe I have one set up on Kick just yet, but would love any support that you have. Obviously, we are living in trying times, so if that's not something you can do, It's not a prerequisite. It is just a little thing that is out there if you want to help support the show and help what we are doing here. So watching is the absolute number one best thing you can do to support if you want to share it with your friends or whatever. But there is a tip link, and that's for those listening in podcast form as well. There's a link in the description for the podcast. There is a link on the page and in the description here on YouTube, and a panel over on Twitch. So again, just if you could help out, I would take any help that we can get. Like I said, more hockey talk to come, including this exact moment in time, as we have a lot more to get to. Big John is here in the chat, breaking down the Stanley Cup Final as well. He said, for me, it's can Edmonton's goalkeeping not blow it? That is fair. That it really does kind of feel like that is what it comes down to, where you look at stacking them up. Obviously, like we just talked about it, forward group v forward group, it's pretty close. Edmonton has an advantage because they have Connor McDavid. On the defensive side, like I said, Edmonton is playing maybe the best defensive hockey that they have played in a really long time. But I do think that the defensemen on Florida are a little bit better, so slight edge there. Bobrovsky is a better goalie than Skinner. There's no question Bobrovsky is a better goalie than Skinner. It is just, can Skinner keep it close enough to let their edge at forward and how close it is on defense keep them in these games and whatever. So I don't think he's going to have to steal any games. I mean, he might, it would help, but he can't lose them any games. He can't be the reason why they lose in any of these games, or else they are incredibly screwed. So yes, I would completely agree there, Big John.